Hayır. Ben de. Öyle şey mi yapmaya gitti bu?
Buradayım buradayım. Şeye bakıyorum
Yani burada
aynen.
mısın kadın?
Ha, buradayım. Bu
Ben YouTube'dan
DNS ile
açtım,
ilgili bir
istersen
problem de
bak.
bu.
Şeyim bozulmuş, adresim bozulmuş.
Yani nasıl yaptım bile unuttum ya Veren. Bunu birkaç şey deneyerek yapmıştım. O yüzden neyin bozulduğunu da çok anlayamadım. Normalde çalışması lazım kendi kendine. IP değişse bile. Bu şeyden dolayı Ha, yo bir dakika. Bunu da değiştirmedim. Çalışıyor. Peki. Çalışıyor mu? Hmm. Hı hı.
Maden Romania, da dumla dumla da.
O ne Veren?
Bir
Hiç
tane,
bile değil.
onu görmediniz mi? Dur. Şimdi attığım sahneden itibaren izlemeye başlayabilirsiniz arkadaşlar.
Vallahi şu an açıyorum.
Müthiş video ya.
Dakika kaçtan itibaren?
Attığım sahneden, o sahneden itibaren izleyebilirsin.
Baştan itibaren yani.
Yo yo, baştan atmadım ya. Kaçtan attım?
Olmuyor. Çocuğun saçları.
Saniyeli mi attın?
Saniyeli
Ben
atmıştım
de baştan
halbuki.
açıyor nedense. Ha,
Aa,
Yok
açıldı.
en baş ama zaten
neyse
15-20
önemli değil ya.
saniyede giriyor.
Benim dedim
Geldi geldi.
34-35'ten itibaren böyle hani şey başlıyor. Böyle sözleriyle beraber.
Bu
Veren bunu nereden buldun ya?
Abi çok meşhur
hakikaten
ya
ya.
o. Şu an bir yine şey yani Instagram meşhurluğu.
Burak bu arada düzelmiş olması lazım ya. Ben şeyden dolayı
Öyle
bozulmuş.
mi?
Bugün ya da dün bozulmuş olması lazım. VPN'i bütün bilgisayara
Söyleyeyim.
çevirmiştim de hiç aklıma gelmemişti böyle bir saçmalık bir şey.
Bozulmuş, düzelmiş evet şu an.
Hemen deneyeyim. Daha
Peki Manchester by the Sea çalışıyor mu? Ona bir bak bakalım.
hemen
Çalışmıyorsa
bakıyorum.
buradan 2 dakika Çünkü bende LG televizyon olmadığı için bu şeyleri deneyemiyorum. Birkaç ayar var burada.
Hemen deniyorum. Zaten sen
Daga
biliyor musun?
daga
Daha
dumla
dumla
da.
dumla daha iyi. Da. Hemen açayım. Biliyor musun abi, biliyormuş. Ha, Defne gel sana da açayım. Bak, ha, açayım.
Zaten Instagram'da çürümek şeyi o. Onu bilir tabi. Bak Dune Part 2 de var bu arada.
Doom Part
Aynen.
2 var mı? Doom
Var.
Part 2.
Ben de henüz izlemedim onu.
Manchester by the Sea nerede ya?
Sen nereden biliyorsun ya sen?
Böyle filmlerde Manchester by the Sea yok. Ha varmış.
Balkan mimlerinin arkalarına
Ha,
koyuyorlar. Şey yapıyorlar ya, dünyada herkesin yaptığı kahvaltı Balkan.
ha.
Bu bir- biliyorum, benim de
Ay, ne. Şimdi yazıyorum, hadi bakalım, hayırlı.
Sen de açılıyor mu Beren Manchester by the Sea?
Bende açılıyor da ne kadar takılıyor kestiremiyorum tabii şu an.
Neden?
Çünkü ileriye sardım. Yüklemedi. Sonra
Dondu
dedim
mu?
ki Burak açacak bari. Şey yapmayayım, bloke etmeyeyim filmi diye saldım ben de.
Ben bu arada şu an izlemeyeceğim de.
Yerli.
Ve bir de şu an öyle bir problem var ya. Benim internet kablo döşemem lazım eve. Nasıl yapacağım o işi bilmiyorum.
Niye lazım?
Kablo.
Bence
Ya
Kadir, sen bu işleri alma. Sen kendin izle. Bir
ha
Safe
kendim
Movies'ten devam ki.
ben kendim izliyorum zaten de buraya onun haricinde de benim kablo döşemem lazım. İnterneti yavaş kullanabiliyorum
Niye?
şu an bulunduğum odada.
Yavaş dediğin ne kadar yavaş?
1 gigabit işte.
Bu gigabit yavaş mı?
Yani 10 gigabit internetim var. Onda birini kullanabiliyorum. Aslında çok
Ha.
yavaş değil de yani
Daha hızlı olabilir.
neden hızlı olabilecekken.
Şimdi açıldı. Şimdi film açıldı mı, ona bakalım. Evet. Doom Part 2. Kalitesi nasıl Doom'un?
açsana.
O da
Onun
4K
kalitesi, onun
galiba.
kalitesinin iyi
O
olması lazım.
4 kalmış.
Geç.
Zaten emin ol, bu daha güzel.
Posteri çok güzel başlıyor.
Oha. Çok
Afişi bile
çok
güzel.
kaliteliymiş lan.
İleride
Düğünden mi bahsediyorsunuz?
Diyorum, evet, şu an ben
Düğün
senin
açtı.
bunu görünce dayanamadım.
at ileri
Onu izlemem lazım ya bir noktada.
herkes bu kadar hızlı çalışıyor yani.
Bir şey
Bak
soracağım.
çok iyi. Ben bakarken böyle değil tabii ki de.
Harika şu an. Biraz şöyle,
Çalışıyor mu?
sen
İyi.
söyle kadın. Doom şu an çok iyi.
Dune 1 mi daha güzeldi arkadaşlar 2 mi?
2 daha güzel
Filmlerden.
canım.
Hangiler güzel dedim herhalde?
2 daha güzel ya.
Görün. Ah, ne yaptı? Evet, görüntü niye siyah beyaz değil, mor biraz. Ben
Bir
anlamadım.
Aa, HDR mı?
televizyonda da mı? Bilgisayarda da mı?
Televizyonda mor biraz.
Televizyonda morsa
Arada
o kesin Dolby Vision Kadir ya. Dolby Vision olmayan versiyonu indirmen lazım.
Bakalım. Bir bakayım. Dune Part 2.
yok, bir
Dolby
dakika söylüyor
Digital.
şu an.
Aynen.
Sıkıntı söylüyor
Dolby
yani.
Digital Plus.
Şey mi DV
O
yazıyor
yüzden
mu
mi
yanında?
böyle mor?
Şeyin yanında mı Beram?
Ya dosyanın adı DV'li mi? DV mi yani adı?
Ona bakayım bir dakika. Şuradan bakabilirim. Table.
Beyler, sen bir mi daha iyi dedin, iki mi daha iyi?
Bence 2 daha iyi ya şey olarak hani yani
Ben,
hem film olarak
bence de iki daha iyi.
hem film olarak daha iyi hem de şey daha iyi.
Kimsenin bizden olasılığı yoktur. Zaten öyle. O Manchester by the Sea 2016 filmi mi?
Evet ya bayağı eski o.
Oğlum o zaman ben de şey diye düşündüm. O film çıktı. Şimdi oralar dolmuş mudur dedim. Tamam. Şu an başlıyor çok
Dıgı
güzel.
dıgı dumla da da. HVAC HDR.
Oğlum Dune'u ben niye burada göremiyorum? What the hell?
Şey de güzel.
Ben de
Burada
bir
var mı?
ileriye
Burada
sarayım
var.
ben de.
Şu an çok güzel. Şu an çok güzel gidiyor, sardıkça gidiyor yani ileriye. Kalitesi de çok iyi.
Tamam.
Çalışıyor yani.
Tamam. O zaman sizin televizyonda demek ki oldu bu ayarlar.
Neyse boşver.
Evet
Ben de sarınca
ya.
ileri gitmiyor. ya.
Gördüm, yedim spoiler ya. Sileyim. Altını okumadım, gördüm.
Ne o? Ne spoilerı? Hangi filmle ilgili?
Enter by the Sea'de. Ya şunu anladım. Yanlış mı anladım bilmiyorum ama sen de hani görmüştün. Niye kulağını kapıyorsun? Çocukları mı
Behram,
ölüyor? Evi mi yanıyor? Ne oluyor?
DV bu arada Behram.
Yani
Hakikaten.
Dolby Vision demek yani. Onu Dolby Vision zaten çok az televizyonda falan var kadar. Belki seninkisinde ben bilmiyorum da.
Ben de bilmiyorum bu arada. Ben öyle bir şey
Dolby
indirdim
Vision
onu yani.
spesifik bir HDR çeşidi galiba.
Hmm.
Zaten hiç çalışmıyor. Bende hiç çalışmıyor yani. Renkler tamamen bozuk.
Ha, o yüzden
Karanlık da
onlardan
değil yani. Renkler bozuk onda.
kaldırıyorlar. Okey.
Renkler ve demin mordu, ben anlamadım.
Ya
Sarı bekliyorduk.
o,
Onu düzgününü indirelim o zaman.
o Dolby Vision olduğu için işte aynen. İndir düzgününü Kadir. Düzgünü var.
Bu
Bende var mesela bilgisayarda.
tamam. Şu Ultra HD profilden o zaman onu çıkartayım ben
O
şeyi.
zaman morlukla ilgili hemen şu sesi açayım bir saniye. Neredeyiz?
Dayı bu ne amına koyayım ya?
Çok uygun oldu aynen.
Ne o ya?
Abi bir tane bu da yine Twitter, bu da Twitter şeyi. Bir tane böyle kaslı bir herif var. Önüne hesap getiriyorlar.
Dayı bu ne amına koyayım ya?
Attın mı?
Ses gelmiyor mu kulağına?
Hayır.
Aa ne ben duyuyorum.
Dayı bu ne amına koyayım ya?
Yani,
Bu gelmiyor mu? Dayı bu ne
niye
diye.
gel? Yok.
Telefonda olduğu
Hayır
zaman şey
gelmiyor.
gitmiyor mu acaba soundboardlar Behram?
Aa çok ilginç.
Belki öyle bir şey
Atsana
vardır.
Berem linkini.
Dur o zaman linkini atayım evet sana bekle.
Twitter'da bilirim diye düşünüyorum. Tam Instagram bilmiyoruz ama Twitter alemini biliriz.
Bak şu video. Twitter'da görmüşsündür ya bunu. Ben hep Twitter'da görüyorum. Instagram'da değil de.
Ha, bu reisi biliyorum ben ya.
Abi böyle random bir şey oluyor. Böyle saçma sapan bir haber görüyor insanlar. Bunu koyuyor. Bayılıyorum.
O adam dünyanın en mal, en garip adamı ya. Gerçekten. Geri zekalı Burak sen onu biliyorsun. Geçen Berat'la onu konuştuk. Bir yere gitmiş bir spor salonuna röportaj mı ne yapacak? Röportaj yaptığı adamın adını bilmiyor. Gittikleri yerin
Ha,
hangi ilçe
evet
olduğunu
hepsini yanlış
bilmiyor.
söylüyor.
Hepsi
Aynen
yanlış.
ha, o video çok çok meşhur. Onu da biliyorum ya.
Ben orada gördüm bu adamı.
Evet.
Mal ya.
Yali.
O zaman Behram bunu peki HDR'ını mı indireyim Behram?
HDR'ını indir ya. Onun herkesin televizyonu HDR herhalde. Senin monitörün
Bizim
HDR.
monitör HDR, Burak'ların HDR zaten.
Bak ikisi OLED zaten hani ona HDR indirmesen ayıp olur.
Aynen. O zaman
Daga dumlada.
American Fiction'ı izlediniz mi?
American Fiction ben izlemedim ya. İzlemek istiyordum ama olmadı. Vakit bir türlü. Aa Kadir.
Merak ettim.
Kopur fabrikası
oldu lan?
öldü.
nerede?
Aşağıdaki. Senin koşarak 3 saniyede
Ha.
oradasın.
Sıkıntı yok ya. Neredeyim ben?
Sağ altında.
Zone of Interest soğuk gibi film var, bu arada izlemiyorum.
Hangisi?
Zone of Interest.
Ben izledim Zone of Interest'i. Garip.
Beğendin mi kadın?
Sonunda bir şey olmayan bir film. Değişik.
Yani
Çok.
hiçbir yerinde bir şey olmayan bir filmdi bence.
Gerçi doğru. Sadece sonunda değil. Hiçbir yerde bir şey olmayan bir film doğru. Doğru bir yorum.
Yani evet. Hani şey gibi herhalde amaçlamışlar. İkinci Dünya Savaşı'nın bakılmayan bakış açısıyla bir de
Evet,
bakalım
aynen.
demişler ama ya şöyle bence çok daha güzel bakabilirlermiş. Ben bilmiyorum. Beni etkilemedi yani. Hayır, daha güzel değil, daha etkileyici bir şekilde. Ya biraz sıkıcı işlemişler.
Ya film boyunca şeyi bekliyorsun hani bir şey olacak bir şey olacak.
Evet, ya evet. Ya bir de ben şöyle hani ya ne bileyim ya bilemedim ya. Sıkıcıydı
Yasin
yani.
beğenmiş mi? Ben çok anlayamıyorum
Ya
Yasin bir şeyler söylüyor ama.
seni de beğenmedi ama benim gibi bokta attırmış işte.
Ha.
Ama ben böyle bayağı sıkıldım yani. Ya ben ama bir de şöyle, ya ben eğer bir filmde beklentiye girdiysem ekstra bokluyorum. For example, bu son adı neydi ya? Adını Poor Things. Mesela Poor Things belki bok gibi bir film değildi ama ya benim beklentim çok yüksek olduğu için ben bok atıyorum Poor Things'e yani.
Onu da izlemedim ya. Sen izledin mi Berem onu?
Ben izledim, bence güzeldi ya.
Evet.
Ben de
Bence
Ama yani hani
bilmiyorum.
o kadar
Ben çok
abartıldığı kadar
güzel
da
bir
iyi
film
değildi.
buldum.
İnternette çok daha böyle hani şey yorumlar vardı onunla ilgili.
Evet. Ben çok iyi, çok harika bir film diye
Şaheser
düşünüyorum.
falan gibi böyle hani o kadar da değildi de güzeldi
Aynen.
yani, ama bence ben beğendim yani.
Bilmiyorum, ben beğenmedim.
İlginçti ya, çok böyle değişik, şeyi çok değişikti bence.
Sen şeyi izlemiş
Sinematografisi
miydin
falan.
Devran? Lobster'ı izlemiş miydin?
Lobster'ı izledim
Aa
birazcık.
Burak,
Hatırlamıyorum,
o senin
çok oldu
söylediğin
ama.
filmlerden biriydi ya. Ben eskiden Yasemin'le mi izlemiştin istiyorsun? Sen onu önermiştin de ben de onu izlemedim hala.
O film bence mesela daha güzel.
O
Hmm.
film daha ilginç bir film ya bu arada.
Evet,
Bir
daha
de
çok daha
bence şey de çok
nispeten
ilginç
da.
faktör. Ben şeyi çok seviyorum ya. Colin Farrell. O Lobster'daki
Evet,
başrol herif.
evet,
Ben onu çok seviyorum. O
bence de.
adam ilginç bir aktör bence.
Tamam guys, ben yine açıyorum.
Tamamdır. Öpüyoruz.
Selam söylüyor Yasemin.
Sen de selam söyle.
Biz de
Selam.
öpüyoruz.
Görüşürüz.
Haydi görüşürüz. Bye.
Bay bay.
Aynen, bay bay. Daga daga dumla da. Madin Romania. Şurada da stone var. Tamam, ben burada ray yapayım birazcık. Birazcık trenlerle oynama kararı aldım Kadir.
İyi yap ya. Aynen. Trenleri bir yola sokmamız lazım. İyi bir düşünce olmuş o. Ben de şu network'ü genişletiyorum. Başka ne yapıyorum ben?
Amma çok robot yapmışsın lan şuraya. Oha.
Nereye?
Ağaçları açıp şuraya.
Ha, yeni yaptım ya. Oralar bakir topraklar Verem. Bekliyor şey yapılmayı. Tamamen uzaktan. Oraya gitmene bile gerek yok yani. Şu 41 de roket kontrol ünit yetmiyor. Bakalım.
Steel plate için kömür gerekmiyor muydu ya Kadir?
Öf, hatırlayamıyorum.
Fabrikada mıydı lan o? Satisfaktörde miydi o?
Hiç hatırlamıyorum. Daha az
Ana,
uğraştım ki onlarla.
öyleyse çok ilginç.
Gerekmiyormuş.
Evet, gerekmiyormuş. Iron plate gerekiyormuş sadece. Iron
Garip
plate'leri
biraz.
alıp biraz daha şey yapıyormuşsun. Fırınacıya koyuyormuşsun. Biraz daha pişiriyormuşsun, oluyormuş. I am Surprised.
Evet. Ben de.
Ben bir 2 dakika tuvalet edip geliyorum.
Evet.
factory.
Aga. Aga.
Arasaydım bu gece. Bu tren hareket ediyor Kadir bu arada, senin şey treni.
Ya
Ee,
evet, o
Hellbringer.
Hellbringer. Şu an evet, o e, rudimenter. Bilmiyorum oraya hiç ateş ediyor mu? Dikkat etmedim ama. Ya ama en azından orada yeni base çıktığı zaman onları öldürüyordur tahminim. Pek bir şey de harcamıyor zaten. Burada gidiyor geliyor. 3-5 kömür harcarsa harcıyor.
Kömürü de istediği gibi harcasın da. Bu ne oğlum?
Bir dakika geliyorum.
Okey.
Geldim.
Peki.
Şulduk. Öğlen gelme şey yaptım da. Yemek. Yemek değil de atıştırmalık. Suvi mısır haşlama. Haşlama değil de işte artık. Hani
Vay, ilginç.
suvi.
Nasıl oldu?
Şöyle güzel oldu ama fazla aromatik oldu. Yani çok mısır tadı geliyor. Yani
Hadi ya.
haşlayınca çünkü biraz böyle sıvı su giriyor ya mısırların
Hmm.
içine. Hani tabii bu
Seyreltik
o
oluyor öyle olduğu
efekt
zaman tabii birazcık.
olmayınca aynen. Böyle ilk başta çok güzel geldi. Sonra iki parça mısır vardı. Bayağı da fazlaydı yani miktar olarak. İkinci parça geçince artık biraz böyle baydı mısır tadı.
Vay anasını.
Şimdi hazır
Aslında
su... Hı, pardon devam.
bazısı tercih eder soruyor. Aslında bu bardak
Evet
mısırlarda
evet.
falan filan hani bassaydın,
Bu arada
tereyağına
evet
bassaydın Kadir.
tercih edilir. Tereyağı da koydum içine bu arada. Paketin yani bagin içerisine tereyağı koyarak pişirdim zaten.
Hmm.
Bir de şeyi
Aslında
internette
next,
böyle
bayağı next
baktım.
level bir şey.
Evet güzel tadı güzel güzel. Ya ama böyle büyük bir parça olmayacak yani. O çok fazla şey geliyor. Hani çok aromatik geliyor. Yani alışık olduğumuz şeye kıyasla muhtemelen.
Hmm.
Tada kıyasla. Fena değildi. Şimdi dedim su sıcakken var et de yapayım. Güzel bir et almıştım. Bakalım nasıl olacak.
Ha, evet bu
Bu
arada
sefer
mantıklı.
süreyi Jül'den bakarak süreyi daha kısa 60 derece sıcaklık. Oradan bakarak yapıyorum bu sefer bakalım. Daha güzel bir sonuç elde edebilirim. İniş.
Yani bir dene bakalım Kadir, evet, çünkü sen çok uzun tutuyormuşsun gibi geldi bana da, çünkü biz bir kere beraber yaptığımız zaman ben senin tuttuğun kadar kesin tutmadım. Bunu sana söyleyeyim, net yani hani. Belki dediğin gibi kemikli parçalarda falan hani biraz daha fark ediyor olabilir. O yüzden
Ya yine bir kemikli parça ama bir kere daha bir deneyeceğim bunu ya. Jül'de de öyle diyorsa bir bakayım. Evet sağ aşağıya da duvar çektim bu. Sen şöyle bir duvar attempt yapmışsın. Orayı da yavaş yavaş yapabilirim aslında.
neresi acaba ya? Sağ aşağıya bayağı büyük duvar çekmişsin Kadir.
Hmm. O pace de çok kolay oluyor ya.
Ben o kadar duvarımız olduğunu bilmiyordum.
Ürettiriyorum. Robot. Bak.
Canı çıkmış robotların burada. Oğlum bunlar nereye gidiyor lan? Ağaç
Ağaçları
kırmaya mı
kestirdim.
gidiyorlar? Ne yapıyor? Ha.
Onları almaya gidiyorlar. Aa, atom bombası satılan yerlerde kalıcı bir şekilde pollution kalıyor ha.
Pollution mu
Pollution
kalıyor?
haritada. Pollution olarak görünüyor haritada.
Aa evet aynen. Vay
Görünüyor.
anasını.
Güzel bir detay olmuş.
Çernobil. Çernobil değil neydi oranın adı? Hiroşima.
Aynen. Çernobil'de benzer bir hikaye.
Yani aynen. Sayılır bence o da. Hadi abi bana da getirin de
Geliyorum.
malzemelerimi.
Sana malzemeleri getirmiyorlar mı ya? Lojistik robotlar evet
O kadar
çalışıyorlarmış.
şeydeyim ki öncelik sırasında sonlardayım ki Kadir. Lojistik robotlar şu an şurada git gel yapıp duruyorlar şuraya.
Sen neredesin ya? Ha, şuradasın.
Şuradaki lojistik robotların tiplerine bak Kadir. Yani hani orada inanılmaz bir akış var.
Evet. Bunların miktarını artırabilirim ya. Biraz lojistik robot üretelim. Ondan önce bir dakika şunu üretebiliyor muyum şu anda? No. Niye? Rocket fuel.
Ana yanlış yere koymuşum ya. Şuraya da koymam gerekiyor tabii lojistik şeyi. Aurora aplikasyonundan yine bildirim geliyor.
Devam mı?
Gittiğimizden beri gelmediği gün olmadı ya bu arada. Çok ilginç değil mi?
Evet. Biraz
Aa bak diyor ki Kadir East Islands'de East Island Iceland'de East Iceland'de rapidly rising temperatures. Yani
enteresan.
bir şey olacakmış diyor ki hani buzlar eriyeceği için şey olabilir. Su seviyesi falan yükselebilir.
Hmm.
Hello and welcome to another Mega Base tutorial video. I'm Exterminator and thank you for joining me again. Today in this episode we're going to look a lot at rails, rail design, junction. And, there's some few key decisions you're going to need to make about your base and specifically in regards to trains for this step. So I'm on a quick little test map to start with. I'm going to show you a few quick examples and explain some things. And then we're going to hop into two of my other saves, which I have looked at previously in this series, to show you even more like live examples of actual bases running with some pros and cons of doing certain things and some differences. So let's just get started here. When you go to place your builds and decide spacing between the builds, this is very, very important, as well as how you connect them to the rails. So it depends also on the size of mega base you're building. For our example, I mentioned this in the first episode, we're going to do 1,000 signs per minute as our benchmark, our goal for any examples in this series. Now, with 1,000 signs per minute, I have my Factorio Lab calculator up in another screen here, and we'll start with some circuits for this example. It says we need 33,000 circuits per minute. Now, depending on the build you design, you may need, let's just say you're doing 1,000 science per minute as well. Depending on the size of the circuit build you make, because, your build may be different than mine, you may need 2 builds, you may need 1 build, you may need 5 builds, depending how big you make them. And this is going to determine how you space things out. For the build I'm using, this is a build I've had for a very long time. This one in particular does about 31,000 green circuits per minute. So I'm actually in a very awkward position where I would end up needing more than one of these, but 2 would be a lot of overkill. So what I may end up doing, hypothetically for something like this, is placing one of these builds and then maybe trimming down a version of it. So maybe chopping off the end rows of it, so the shorter row on the top of the build and the short row on the bottom, to kind of reduce the production a bit of the second one and place a second one. And then, for red circuits, it says we need 7,555, and one of my builds of the red circuits here does
Oo,
11,000.
yeşil
So I only need
borunlar
one
bayağı
of these.
kuvvetliymiş
And
ya.
then blue circuits we should be set on as well. We only need 1,000 a minute, and my blue circuit build does about 3.6k a
Yeşil
minute, which is
büyük
actually
behemothlar
quite a lot of
değil mi?
overkill. Same with the red
Galiba,
circuits for that
evet.
matter. So I would maybe
Onlar
trim these down as well. No use
üzüyor.
taking up the extra
Beni
space
öldüren oydu
and
işte.
machines and all that stuff just for no reason really. Definitely you do want to overproduce a bit though. My point in mentioning all this though is with spacing. So in this case, I don't really need that many circuit builds. If you were in a case where you needed a lot more, you would really need to consider your spacing on rails and how you connect them. So I have a 2-lane rail here set up as a quick example. And let's just hypothetically say I was going to put one of these builds, we'll just put it, here. Now, obviously you would need room for a full junction and stuff, but the point of me doing this is in terms of spacing between the builds. So if we have this one here and it connects to this rail, based on the setup of this build, we have 2 trains that are absolutely going to need to probably come in from here because, the stations are up here, so they're going to have to enter from this side. Now this one does enter from the other side. There is a potential I would want to do a pull through, meaning that it pulls through here as if it were a single-headed train and leaves on this rail as well. But what we don't want to do, so when we place one build, regardless of if it's another green circuit build or blue circuit build or red circuit build or even smelters, and smelters may definitely be a case for this because you will very likely need multiple smelters of each type. We do not want to just take our next build and just plop it down like right here. Even though technically in between the builds themselves there's enough space, there's not really an issue here. When it goes to connect to the rail, this is significantly too close to each other for multiple reasons. Now, your train size, this is where your train size really comes into play, and this is when you need to decide, when you build your builds, you obviously need to decide on train size if you're having your trains come into the build. If you're just doing like a belt base or even with bots and you have just general train drop-offs that are then like botted or belted to the other builds, then this may not be as big of a concern, but you still do need to decide your train size before you build your rail system. And the reason for this is because your junction spacing is going to depend quite a lot on your train size. There are other factors that come into play here, which I will explain, but your train size is going to be important for this because the minimum space between 2 junctions, the absolute like bare minimum, should be the size of your longest train, meaning that your longest train can park between 2 junctions. Like if it's stopped on the track waiting in a traffic jam or whatever, it can be in between 2 junctions and not have its front or its end sticking out into the junction in front of it or behind it, because then that creates blocks of things entering or exiting those junctions, and then one train is just stopping the entire rail system. And that's the absolute minimum. I would say you need a lot more than that. Like that's just, if you just want to go bare minimum, that is the bare minimum. So for this case, if I were to put this here, my trains in this, I believe, are 363s.
100 oldu mu?
A 363 is
Yapılacak.
eyeballing it,
Ne?
not
Ha
gonna
yok
fit.
o değil ya.
You're in
Satarak
a
ürettim.
very,
Ne
very
yapayım?
Ha
big
şey tamam
depending
okey
on
aynen hatırladım. Sorry.
Ha, roketin içine koyuyormuşuz. Herhalde burada roket olacak. Sonra bunun içine koyacağız. Rocket parts diyor ya.
54 olmuş o da.
Aynen.
if I bring the rails down from the closest rails to these builds on this red circuit build, but this would be just significantly too close. I would personally leave probably 2, maybe even 3 train links between your junctions, and this does also depend on the actual volume of trains you're going to be having on here. And they're spread out several minutes apart. You know, you could probably definitely get away with having the minimum of a train length space between your junctions. But in an example we're going to show here shortly in one of my saves, if you have more of a higher throughput and volume amount of trains, you absolutely want to be spacing your builds significantly farther apart, and the other key thing, not necessarily connecting them all to the same main line. So it can be instinctive to just connect everything to this main line. However, you may want to set up your builds in such a way where you have multiple main lines. Maybe there's another one above it. Not this for another example I'm going to show you. Maybe we have another one, another main line above this, where some of these trains come in from that, and it connects somewhere far away, or maybe even it's a completely separate main line. So like if this were a smelter, would be a perfect example of this. Maybe you have your ore trains on an entirely separate rail line that has no connections whatsoever to your other rail line where all your intermediate and in products are. And then in yet another example I'm going to show you here, that is the case, and it helps a lot. So these are just things to consider, when you go to do your spacing. And this is really only viable for, but just generally, I would, but you need to a rail system with a ton of lanes in it and stuff, and try to depend on the trains doing the right thing. You're not gaining anything. Trust me, I've done this before, and it does not help. And here's the reason for that. As this rail system stands, it does have some advantage over a 2-lane system, just purely by the fact that you can have 2 trains moving here from left to right at the same time, because you have 2 rails, and the same with right to left is compared to just one on the 2-lane system, because you only have 1 lane.
100 tane daha
So
lojistik
it does have
robotu
that
kullanıma sürdüm.
Eline sağlık Yavuz Kadir burada.
Advantage, but when it comes to actually turning into builds using junctions and not creating backups, unless you do tweaking to kind of isolate your rail connections, the trains are very likely not going to be smart enough to do what you would hope they would do. Like if you have, say, 2 trains that need to go to a build that's up here, okay, and and they're coming from somewhere, and you leave this junction as is, ideally, what we would like, as you might imagine, is one train to be on this line and use this lane to turn in, and then the other one on this line, so that they're not backed up behind each other, and then there's nothing happening here. However, that is very likely probably not going to be the case. It may happen just by, chance, but the trains are not that smart, okay? So, and whereas with this, if you force your trains to do, to only go in from one lane every few builds or however you want to do it, then you are forcing them to space out. So let's say this stops here for whatever reason it can't enter. It may stop the trains for this build and maybe any other builds that use this line, but all the other builds that use this line, they're free to go. They can just keep cruising along. And this is where you do gain the advantage of having multiple lanes. Should be fine for like 10k science a minute, 15k science. I mean, this should be good for basically anything if you use it correctly. You could go up to 6 or 8. You just, unless you're really, really tweaking it and such, it's kind of a waste at that point. Unless you were just really, really messing with it to make it do what you want. So I hope that helped. Now, to actually show you examples of this spacing and such, let's go ahead and hop into a couple saves here. So we go to Night Supplying Atlantis, which we have looked at multiple times before. It will take a minute to load because it's switching out the mods here. So if we do this, go in here, and I've looked at this before, but we're gonna look at it a bit closer here in potentially a little bit of a different way as the map loads here. We will notice that we have all these builds in a line on this main line section here. And the first thing you may notice is there's a lot of junctions, and a lot of them are very close together. And this is a mistake. I will be the first to admit this was very poor building on my part. And now, I do want to mention, you may not notice, at first glance, you may not notice much of a difference between this and what I'm going to show you in my next base that I load up. Because they do use very similar concepts. They actually both just connect to like one main line. But there are some very key differences. And I'll be interested if you guys notice them before I mention them or not. So, in this one, a lot of these junctions are not spaced correctly. I believe this one, well, this one I don't think is. There's no way this train can fit in there. So, this one's too close, this one's too close. Obviously, this one just shouldn't even be here. This one I think is okay, barely. I modified a few of these. This one's okay, like barely, bare minimum. Again, definitely want to go farther than that. So, first issue we notice here, these are spaced too close together. I put these builds way too close together, and this is an example of what you do not want to do. Okay, I have 2 red circuit builds. Now, granted, this one I added later. This one was not here. When I first built this, it was just this, and then like this, and this, and all that. However, even then, it was too close because there's a lot of traffic here, and as you can see, we're having some stop and go here just because I have to have signals on here so we don't have crashes. So every time a train slows down, it's slowing down the ones behind it because there's just really no room to breathe on this rail system here. I put my red circuit build, I put another red circuit build, a module build, a massive green circuit build here, which is actually not too bad the way I've designed it, but it certainly has room for improvement, and we can see how this could be improved in the next map we're going to look at. And then, in addition to that, we have not all, but a decent amount of our mining and smelting, because we're doing on-site smelting. So a decent amount of our plate trains are on this line as well, and they all have to go to the left. There's nowhere for them to go this way, so they're all going this way. So the vital mistake I've made a few here, is putting builds too close. That's the first lesson. Also, connecting too many builds to the same main line. You will see a few other connections, like over here, and this was added pretty recently. Even this isn't great. It's on like another section, but it's still pretty close to here, and it all feeds into the same junction, which is, that's fairly close together in the grand scheme of things. So that still isn't great. And then also putting, the other mistake is putting all of these, plate train and ore smelting, all on here and all having to go the same direction. That's the other issue, is that they all have to go the same direction. This is sending uranium trains. This is sending like 4 outposts worth of iron trains and a coal outpost worth of trains all in the same direction. And a lot of them are going right here, so then there's even more traffic you're just shoving in here. And you can see this, guys. Like, you can see this in real life, and obviously it's nowhere near as fixable in real life as in Factorio. But if you have, if you place all of your, or not all, but in cities and such where a large amount of people all work in one section of the city, that's what rush hour is, right? Everybody goes to work, the same schedules for these. There are kind of production cycles and such, but the same principle applies. This is, in a sense, this could be considered like the downtown, and then like everything out here is like, the living neighborhood, suburb and stuff, and everything's just all going here, all leaving from here, and this is just, this is a disaster. This is actually working really well right now. There was a large period of time where this was just a traffic jam throughout this entire thing, and we were having major issues elsewhere on our map because none of the trains could get where they needed to go. So they were running late for work, if you will. But yeah, this is an example of just something you do not want to do. Now, how can we fix this? What is a counterexample of this? You may be looking at this. Okay, well, that's great, Extern, but how can I not do this? Okay, well, here's an example. We're going to load into another map, and I use this map a lot because well, a lot of the principles in here, at least in the builds, are somewhat outdated. I still very much stand by a lot of the stuff on this map that I'm going to show you, and it's still like probably one of my all-time favorite maps that I've ever built here. Sending the supporters to space. This is the biggest base I've ever built, and this is an example, I would say. Now, there is some train stuff in here that is questionable. At the time, it seemed like an ingenious idea, and it works. However, with the train abilities and technologies we have now, some of this is quite questionable. However, what I'm going to show you is kind of unrelated to that, so it should be okay. This will load up here. If this doesn't load, I may just do a quick cut here and come back once it... And the things that this utilizes that make this different, so at first glance, and this is actually using a 4-lane rail system. At first glance, you may think, well, Extreme, I don't really see much difference because you have all these junctions kind of close together, all connecting to each other on this one rail line here. And that is very true. You would be correct. However, and I mean, there are still some issues, I suppose. However, a few things are very different here. The first one being that our ore trains are completely separate from everything else. All of the ore trains funnel in to these massive things, which I'm not really going to go into. However, all the ore trains all come in through these main lines, and they only come from from here and down. You can see they spread out very far, all the way down to here. They have absolutely no connection and interaction whatsoever with anything up here that are intermediate and finished products, because what they do is they go in here and they transfer. We were using modded entities for this, but if the entities were here, they would transfer the ore from one train to another, and these ore trains within, you can see these are separate rail systems here, would come in and then go to their respective smelters, and then the plate trains are on yet another rail system, so the ore trains just absolutely have no interaction whatsoever with any of the other trains, and they go to where they need to. So that's the first thing, right? Because if you recall, in Supplying Atlantis, all the ore...
Welcome to Factorio Masterclass. My name is Nilas. This is the series of tutorials and guides here on YouTube covering all aspects of the game and aims to provide insights and resources to help you improve. In this episode, we are finally dealing with trains and rails and signals. More than hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more. If you have a train, you have a locomotive, and you have some wagons, let's put 4 wagons in Are you going to have the train driving only in one direction, which means making loops and going back, or will you have a locomotive in either direction so that it can go in both directions? Let's put some fuel in so it looks nice. So that's one of the first decisions. So either double-headed or single-headed trains. Now, I think it would be fair to say that there are different situations where each are necessary, and there's also a big part of it that's preference. Let me say, if you are building a single train line, you have a very nice iron deposit somewhere out in the world and you'd like to bring it back to the base, then my recommendation for the very first train would be build a double-headed train, because then you only need to make one train line. You don't have to deal with signals or anything like that. It's simply going from A to B and back, signals or A to the base. Then my recommendation for the very first train would be build a double-headed train, because then you only need to make one train line. You don't have to deal with signals or anything like that. It's simply going from A to B and back and forth. Very, very simple. You don't need to deal with any sort of loop arounds or signals or anything like that. That would be a very good case where you can use it. However, you can also use double-headed trains for very advanced setups. However, for anything except for that single back and forth situation, I am having a preference for the single-headed trains. The reason why I have a preference for the single-headed trains is because they are faster and shorter. Obviously, if this train is carrying a heavy train here at the back, dead weight, it's going to accelerate slower, it's going to move slower, and it's also going to take up more space than a single-headed train. So for big train networks, I definitely prefer this. They are faster, and they are shorter, so they can easier fit into different locations. Signaling, which we will come to, is also much simpler, in my opinion, when it comes to single-headed trains, because the trains will only go in one direction on any given. Let's talk about train sizes. So this is what everyone calls a 1-1 train, one locomotive, one wagon, 1-2, 1-3, 1-4. What kind of size would be beneficial for you? Well, the thing is, the shorter train are faster, but of course they can't load as much. If you have 1-1 trains, then you're going to need 4 1-1 trains for each 1-4 train. It's kind of obvious to carry the same amount of resource. That means you will have a lot more trains running around your network. In order to transport the same amount of materials, that means you need more management of where they're going to park on train size. And actually, let me use this opportunity to show you another feature. If you see here, I hold a train, you can see here there are some white markers on the tracks. These white markers indicate how many trains there are. So for example, if I wanted to build a signal, it's actually really nice for me to just get a sense of that one. If I build a signal here, then I can fit in 1 train, 1 locomotive, and 4 wagons. This is an interface command, so go to settings, go to interface, and you can do the train visualization here if you want your trains to be 2 8 trains. For example, in this case, you can see here 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 8. That's what visualizes. So I can easily see how big it is. That means your default train length, set this parameter here to what you like. I am going to deal mostly with 1-4 trains, so I'm going to set to 5 length. Now, my preferred size of trains is always a power of 2. And that means it's either a 1-1, very rarely, a 1-2, a 1-4, or a 2-8. The reason why I added 2 locomotives is because the weight of all these loaded wagons means that one locomotive just can't really carry it fast enough. And I found that with the braking speed and nuclear fuel, then this one is quite fast and quite easily handle 2 locomotives to 8 wagons. So that's kind of my size. So when do you want to use each one? Well, let's say that you're moving space science around. It stacks to 2,000, so probably you can get a lot of weight, a lot of stuff into one single train. However, if you're moving ore from a remote mining operation, you might want bigger trains. You can also consider whether you always want the same trains or different sizes, because the signal will depend on different sizes. Now, if you have a base with a lot of materials that are moving around by train inside the base, then smaller trains make sense because there's shorter travel distance and you want to sort of keep up the production. Also, very expensive things like red circuits attack to 200 you can probably last a while even with a small train, while ore and plates should be coming on bigger trains. So generally, with my bases, I build 1-4 trains or 1 or 2 8 trains. 2 8 trains are the best ones in my opinion for ore deliveries. The reason why I take a power of 2 as the power is because of the unloading and loading situation. When you have a power of 2, then we get that here. It's very easy to take stuff being offloaded and balance it immediately. Likewise here on this path. I know these, don't mind the station, this is just how I build it, and I have different types of stations for different needs. This one is here to illustrate exactly one point, and that is how easy it is to, when you have a power of 2 chests go into 1 belt, 2 chests go into 1 belt, that means 4 chests go into here, go into one belt, and you can take anything that divides by 2 or 4 or 8 is just going to be easier. And here we have a 2 8 train that's being unloaded. That's why I take things in power of 2. So 1 1, very rare. 1 2, if you have a congested base with lots of trains running around. 1 4 or 1 or 2 8 for larger quantities and larger distances. The next topic is also a highly contested and not really a rational topic to talk about, and that's the driving side. You need to decide if you have one-headed trains, if they are going to drive right-hand side, as you have here, or left-hand side. The only difference is in your mind. Now, the difference functionality-wise is that you can see here, if you build the right-hand drive, your signals will be on the outside of the belt, while if you make a left-hand drive, your signals will be on the inside of the belt. That can have certain advantages, disadvantages. Let's say you're landfilling across a large lake, then you don't need to make room for these signals on the outside if you do left-hand drive. However, I would say your decision for left-hand, right-hand drive is almost certainly dictated by the country you live in, because that's just how you're used to things working. In my case, I'm only doing right-hand drive. All my blueprints are right-hand drive. I will never talk about left-hand drive again. That's just the way it is. So that was just something you keep in mind. You can choose however you like, but if you are looking into my blueprints, then they're all going to be right-hand drive. And now we get to the topic that I know that most people who are worried about trains or not really familiar with trains are getting the most worried about, and that's signals. How do you signal things properly? And what are the rules that you should use when signaling things, and how do you avoid deadlocks? Deadlocks being when trains sort of block each other and they get stuck. So I'm going to start by posing a challenge for any of you veteran players or anyone who just feels like, yeah, you know what, I think I understand signals. Here is a very basic T intersection. I encourage you to pause the video and just look at this one and see how many signals and what kind of signals you would want to put in. Then we're going to go through the signals and then come back to this one and see if you and I are agreeing on how many signals we should do. So give it a shot. Now here we have a test intersection I have made that we're going to use this one for our working with signals. And if you go to the one that's called Show Rail Signal States, we go to the map, you can see now I have signal states. If I check this out, this is the normal. If I do this, you actually have the signals on the map. I would encourage you when working with trains to do this, unless you're building very big bases. It somewhere moves around your quite down. We are going to start by ignoring chain signals and just explain the concept. If we look at put a train here, now you can see some of the rail signals already change color. Now if we hold a signal in hand, then the interface changes. You can see that now there's an overlay. This pink area is what is called one block in train terminology. So actually the signals are only there as delimitations of I would call it an object, the object being the block. And if I put another signal here, then this becomes a block. And when a train is in a block, the block is closed, and any signal leading into the block will be turned off. So you can see now these are open. All the other ones are open. It's only this one that's closed because this is the only way that you can go into this block, the block being the yellow line. If I take it out, then the block now consists of all of these integrations here, and that you can obviously say that this is a problem, because that means as soon as one train is in here, the next train coming from up here has to stop right there because there's a train in here. So we don't want that. What we'd really like to do is make sure that before going into an intersection, we want to block it off and just going, okay, you don't go into the intersection if you don't have to. And at this point, this is good. I can also do it from the other sides. Let's try doing the same length there and there. Again, only do right-hand drive. So in this case, this looks good. Let's look at what this blocks look like. Now on the inside, we can get really close to the train.
Kadir bu şeyleri
And here it'll stop, and the other train
birazcık dışarıya yapıyordum turetleri.
This one can drive through. This one can drive through.
Hangi
No
turetleri?
problems while this one is waiting. For example, if
Duvarların birazcık uzağına yapıyordun
train.
ya, lazer turetleri.
There.
Ha,
Then we'll
bilerek yapıyorum ya. Çok şey
There's
olmuyor
another
çünkü
train.
artık
There.
çok
Then we'll
kuvvetliler.
stop here. So that's
Sıkıntı
kind of
olmuyor.
how train signal work. However, what
Copy
if
paste
there
yapması
is
kolay
another
oluyor
train
yakın yapınca.
here?
Ha, okay.
Alright, let's say this one's going in. Another train comes in. It drives through, and it's here. That was funny. It is a 1-4 train. Because there's a signal here, and there's another train that's parked right there. So this train's parked here. This one is kindly waiting here, and then its ass is hanging into this signal, and thereby blocking everything. This is what causes deadlocks. When you have only normal signals, you will very often get deadlocks because things will just get stuck inside here. So that is what we want to prevent. We simply want to say, you know what? Don't go into the signal unless you can also go out. That's where chain signals comes in. Chain signals is basically replicating this next signal. That's all it does. So now I replaced the normal signal with the rail signal. That means this signal will repeat what the next signal is. That means if I place the train here, this one is just repeating what's over here, and that means it's blocking me from entering this block here because of that one. So how do we can do that quite handily like this. Actually, I think I want these to be just a tiny bit closer. I think I was a point to actually make them as close as possible. Yep. There. Because now, at this point, if the train is over here, then it's allowed to go all the way through here. Go up here, and then our 4 wagons, 4. And this is where that one comes in handy. You want to make sure that the signals are making enough room so that you can have a full train here. If this signal was that location, I would still have problems, because even if this one was blocked, my train says the chain signal is open because the next signal is open, and my train can go through 4. This is why you kind of have to decide how big your trains are up front, because you need to place signals so that they can clear entire locations. So even if you have chain signals or normal signals too close to each other, you have to make sure that there's room afterwards so that it can actually clear the intersection. So the correct way to signal this would be to say, on the way in you make a chain signal. Let's make it on the way in, chain signal, and on the way out you make normal signals. And you have to make sure that on the other side of the rail signal there is sufficient room for a full train length. This also means that this is one of the disadvantages of having long trains, is that you need to have more space all the way around. This one is a potential conflict. Have more room around your intersections. That means if you have a compact base where trains are moving around a lot, then you have to have shorter trains, because you simply do not have room for those long trains to be fully clearing an intersection. So let's look at what it looks like now. We have the entire intersection here is one block. Well, that's actually not super useful, because that means as I am moving through this block, I'm actually also preventing a train coming up here from just going straight through. And that's not really beneficial, is it? So what if I just put some signals in the middle? Here. Now I can have, while this train is going through the intersection, another train can go on the northern bound, the other side here. So this is the correct way to signal it, so that trains can go in parallel and they don't block each other. So I've tried to formulate some kind of rules for you to understand, and when you're initiating your own base, what are the rules that you want to keep in mind in order to make signals correctly. I've heard some things, rules of thumb, and I don't like them because they're actually going to get you in trouble. So I'm going to try it my own way. Basically, the rule is you should use normal signals as a default. However, the rule is that after a normal signal, you must have room for a full train length afterwards in the next block. So, for example, this one can be a normal signal, because after this one, there is a block, and that block can contain a full train. This one, could that be a normal signal? No, because the block following it is the turquoise one, and that one cannot keep a full train. Therefore, it must be a chain signal. If you follow that rule, you might put a few too many signals, but you will definitely not make signals incorrectly. So basically, every time you consider to put in a normal signal, you should look after that normal signal and see, can I fit in a full train of the longest trains that I'm going to have on this track? If yes, you can put down a normal signal. If no, that has to be a chain signal. So, I hope that helped. Regarding signal states, there are kind of a different way as well. There are some cases where, there, you can see here, now you have a blinking signal. What does that mean? Well, this blinking signal just tells you that it's not doing anything. This is unresolved. It is not able to split into separate blocks. As soon as I do this, then it is able to split it into at least saying a left and a right block. But at this point, the block is the same no matter if you place it here. So this doesn't do anything. Therefore, it's blinking and has served no purpose. The other signal that I built a little case for is here. This is a blue signal. It only happens on chain signals. And basically, on a blue signal, if we build a train at this location, here, the blue signal means that it has several paths out, but one of them, or they're not all the same. If they're all green, if they're all red, this is going to be red signal. If they're all green, this is going to be a green signal. But if some are red and some are green, then it becomes blue. The interesting thing about the blue here is that I have a train station here that's called 1, and another one that's called 2. If I schedule this to go to 1, we'll go to schedule in a second. It'll stop. If I schedule it to go into 2, it'll go there. So the chain signal is actually being selective on what it blocks and not. And that's the power of the blue signal. So you can have blue signals that lead into an array of different locations, and it'll only block the ones that lead into red. But that means you can't know if a blue signal will stop your train or not unless you know where it's going. Now let's revisit our challenge to see if we can apply what we learned here and make this as efficiently as possible to do it, and also with a dash of aesthetics to it. So this is right hand drive. That means I'm coming in.
Ne bitti Kadir?
%82 oldu.
Şey yaptın mı peki, satelit?
Bir tane satelit de yaptım.
Bakalım ne olacak ya. Dur ben bir oraya doğru geleyim. Çünkü yani hani bir yandan başka bir şey yapıyorum. Tren sinyalleriyle ilgili bir şeyler seyrediyorum. Nasıl çalışıyor diye. Çok
Ha,
karışıkmış Kadir.
çok karışık ya, evet.
Aşırı karışık yani.
Benim kafam basmadı ona.
Bunlar nasıl ağaçlar lan böyle? ...83. Elle yapamıyor muyuz ya bazı şeylerini elle yapsak?
Yani roket fuel yapmamız lazım. O öyle yapılmıyor. Şu an eksik olan sadece o var. O da neredeyse tamamen kullanıyoruz oradaki hattı.
Rocket
Hatta
fuel
bakayım.
için ne gerekiyordu?
Bunlar gene kafa kafaya gelmiş gerizekalılar ya. Biri.
Kadir
Roket
trenlerle ilgili
fuel
şöyle
için.
bir şey öğrendim mesela bak trenlerin boyu. Şimdi burada intersection'lar var ya sinyaller.
Hı hı.
Trenlerin boyu o intersection'lardan daha kısa olmak zorundaymış. Çünkü
Aynen. Geçtiği zaman kırmızıya döndürüyor. İşte onu da ben de bir noktada fark edip onları düzelttim. Hatta sana dedim ya trenlerin boyunu uzatamayız çünkü
hmm,
bifurkasyonlarda sıkıntı olur diye
evet
tam onu kastediyordum.
aldım. Hmm, burada bir yerde rocket fuel üretecek. Nerede üretiyorsun rocket fuel'u Kadir?
Ben tam bulunduğum yerde.
Bunu kopyala yapıştırla iki katına çıkaramaz mısın?
Ya şöyle bak
Sarı birikiyor
şu
çünkü.
sarı birikmiyor ya. Hatta %90'dan düştü oraya o.
Peki peki yukarıdaki şeyde yapalım. Orada bir sürü şey var. Boş duran
Başka yer
oil var.
varsa bakmadım ben. Onu bilmiyorum.
Bu
Başka yer varsa
bizim
orada
en
yapabiliriz.
kuzeyde Hellfinger'ın sağında 4 tane line var. Bunlar genel olarak boş duruyorlar. Hepsi gaz üretiyor. Petroleum gaz üretiyor.
Yapabiliriz. %85 ama değer mi şu an ona?
Ne kadar hızlı gidiyor bilmiyorum da değmeyebilir evet.
Yani işte %85 %80 yani ne kadar roket fuel geldiği ilgili şu an onu hesaplayamıyorum tam da.
Roket fuel'u bakayım nasıl üretiyoruz ya. Şöyle hızlıca. Ya da dur ya bir dakika.
Üretmesi kolay aslında ya.
Sen roket fuel nerede?
Light oil ve
Roket fuel nerede
galiba
üretiyorsun?
öyle bir şey
Bakayım
değneği
bir.
yok.
Petroleum gaz alıp bunu şeye çeviriyorsun.
Ha aynen katı
Solid'e
şeye.
çeviriyorsun. Solid'le de ondan sonra ne plate falan veriyor musun peki?
Yo yo plate vermiyorsun. Sadece solid ile light oil galiba ikisini birleştiriyorsun.
Tamam ben gidiyorum.
Yapacağım mı?
Yapayım dursun ya bir daha şey yaparız. Bir o yukarısındaki hatta çok gitmeme gerek olmayabilir bile. Burada iki tane bizim oil hattımız vardı. Bir tanesi nerede? Bak şurada oil üretiliyor. Burada sen roket fuel üretiyorsun. Tamam okey. Şuradakini ne yapıyoruz
Bir tane daha
mesela?
vardı doğru diyorsun ya. Neredeydi? Bir tane daha vardı gerçekten.
Burada duruyor. O. Light oil
Boş mu bir
şişelemiş
tanesi?
miyiz? Light oil gelmemiş. Çünkü hepsini şeye çevirmişiz. Petroleum gasa. Tamam oraya gideyim. Burası zaten şey fabrikası. Kaos fabrikası burası.
Neredesin sen? Aynen. Orada küçük küçük her şey. Little into the middle.
Output full. Ama bunu bağlamıyor muyum ben mainline'a ya? Buradaki petroleum gaz mainline'a bağlı değil mi gerçekten?
Abi al base üzücü olmuş çünkü bir miktar petrol gazda bir miktar eksik kalıyordu.
Yo, bağlıyor.
Katı şey üretmekte bir miktar sıkıntı yaşıyorduk. O yüzden şimdi plastik line'dan birkaç tane azalttım.
Bağlı da bağlı mı? Burası şeye bağlı değilmiş. Şuraya bakayım be.
İki tane daha
Bu
patlatayım.
gaz üretiyor. Yeşili bunun heavy oil nereye gidiyor burada? Lubrikant üretiyor. Heavy oil'ın bir kısmı light oil üretiyor zaten. Fabrikalar niye çalışıyor? Bunları çalışmasını istemiyorduk biz Kadir.
Onlar şu petrol gaz yetmediği için çalıştırtıyorum onları. Bu sefer katı şey üretemedim.
Bir dakika.
Aa, bu sol tarafta petrol gaz varmış, evet. Ondan görmemiştim. Onu çekeceksin ha.
Onu çekiyorum şu an.
Tamam, benim et oldu. Durduralım mı? Sen devam etmek ister misin?
Dur Kadir çünkü ben bir yandan şeye bakıyorum.
Tamam, o zaman save'liyorum. Ya da pause'layayım mı? Save'leyeyim ve pause'layayım.
Ben de sevdim.
Yani ben bir yarım saat bulmaz muhtemelen gelmem.
Tamam okey. Afiyet olsun sana.
Geçeceğim. Tamam,
Hadi
görüşürüz.
bay bay.
Here, it can either go right or left. Likewise, here it comes. Go straight ahead or turn left. Or here, turn right or go straight ahead. So the way I usually try to signal things, because when you build big intersections, it gets really complicated. So the way I try to keep in mind is that I want to say, I want to start from one location and then follow the tracks through, so that I make sure that all the tracks through for this particular lane is actually signaled. Let's go through it. This one goes all the way over here, and I'm gonna put a signal in there, because I know that there will also be something here, and that means I'm going to assume that the block out here will be sufficient big. Now this one doesn't do anything yet, and basically what we can do is we can always just go, I think I want to make normal signal here, and I want to make a normal signal here, and then I can already see this can't be a normal signal according to our rules, because the block following, this is blinking because it hasn't been defined quite as a block. This one has to be a normal signal, because after that, the next stretch here will definitely not fit in a full chain. This one though, I can fit in a full chain here. So that's coming from the south. Let's go come here from the east. The options, it goes through. And if I do that, yeah. So now I have more distinct blocks. There's one distinct block here, there's one distinct block here, and then everything else is one block. Now let's do the round around, go through here. I'll definitely want one here, but that one cannot be a normal signal, because the path afterwards up to the next signal is not long enough. And that's basically, then it's free and out. Now let's do the last one. It comes from here, turns right, and I'm gonna put it here. And that means, at this point, it goes. These two go into this block, and it looks good. Now if I want to go straight ahead, again, I want to block it so that right now, all the yellow one is actually meaning that as soon as the train comes in here, there's no intersections any other way. I want to make sure that the train could go turn right, and also come here and turn left at the same time, or go straight through. And that would require us to build a signal there and there. However, that one, the yellow block in between, is not big enough to fit a full signal, so that has to be a chain signal leading in, so that it clears it. And there you have it. Let's look at it. The main point is that you want to make when you have an intersection like this, you want to make sure that things do not block unnecessarily. Of course, when you cut across a track, you will block anything here, but you don't want to have a situation where when you make a turn here, it also blocks that turn. Or if you make a turn here, then it blocks the straight ahead, or that one, or that one. So you want to leave as many parallel tracks open as possible, and this is basically just every time there's an intersection, we make it here. There's one thing that I'm sure you're already some of you are already typing away is, why am I not doing this thing? Because some people have been taught that you do chain intersections into an intersection and normal on the outside, on the way out of an intersection. That's kind of a rule of thumb. What is the difference here? What is the difference between this one and the one I had before? Well, the only thing is that the train will stop here until that one is clear. And it'll stop here until it can completely clear this area. Well, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter. If I take this out, there's nothing, as long as this one comes out, if this one goes in here and it's stuck at a location such as this, then it's still blocking that lane anyway. So there's no point in making sure that it merges completely into the lane. But the advantage is that now it can actually go, the intersection is smaller. And the smaller your intersection is, the faster trains can clear it. That means you need less space between intersections to fit in the whole train. This is particularly important with longer trains, that you want to make sure that they stay inside an intersection for as short as possible, and they go out and go into blocks that are delimited by normal signals. So this is, in my opinion, the best way to signal this. The answer was 6 normal signals and 3 chain signals. Not very much. Of course, if you really want to optimize, you can make these like really close to the intersections here, but then you lose some aesthetic, and I like the fact that there's aesthetic. That's kind of a triangle here. I'd prefer that, and moving it one tile over for a minuscule improvement is not worth it. The other hand, did you get it right? Do you have comments? Do you think there's anything wrong with it? Let me know in the comments on this one. Now that's a lot of the infrastructure on how to build tracks, but what about actually scheduling? Well, before we dive into the scheduling, I just want to take a moment to thank all the fantastic patrons who are supporting the channel. Without you patrons, it would not be possible for